No, no, I'm not muted. I'm just getting started, write some stuff down. But I don't really have a format for this stream yet. I've been asked to kind of build out like a skill tree for artists and maybe it's almost like a flow chart, but it's not linear. And yeah, this is Photoshop. I think I might just switch to uh call it Clip Studio because I like writing in Clip Studio more. Just the brush is nicer. But let me see if I can I no. Uh can I do let me see if I can just whoops do that. Okay, it's ugly, but whatever. Let me pick a pen. That close enough. I find that the sharpness in CSP is generally higher with the same pixel count. I really need to make a different pen, like a line tool pen. I'll make it right now so that I can write easier. Okay, let's see, does this work? Okay, so this is close to something I like to write with. Uh, so I don't really know what the how to organize the chart yet. So I'll just start jotting stuff down until I get some kind of um, structure. So generally, I want to break it down into like beginner, intermediate, advanced to just not really a. It's kind of hard to separate them sometimes, but maybe it makes more sense to build it top down. Like, let's build it linear first. So let's erase everything. So let's say, whoops. Beginner, and then let's do that. Okay. And then advanced. Okay, cool. So I did previously write a kind of a document for what you call it, like a not a flowchart, but like progression for how people should progress in art, like a reasonable. Let me just pull it up. I can't do two things at once. Okay, so and it there might be some logical mistakes in here because I didn't spend too much time thinking it through, but this is basically like a short syllabus for like, I don't know, first 5 to 10 years of art, and it focuses on fundamentals, and I kind of break it down to like what you need to learn and why you need to learn certain things in order to progress to the next thing. And basically, I just want to flowchart this and a bit more. So that's, I'm going to go with that. It is posted on Discord. It's in my crit log. So I do critiques for myself over time. No, it's not a YouTube video script. It's a script that, not a script, but a description of my views on art, and some people might find it useful to kind of see where you fit, and it'll give you a good idea of what to practice. Oh, well, I haven't made the chart yet. So that's, I guess let's do a description of what the these individual tiers really mean. So beginner is like you have no experience. So no experience, right? Like you never picked up a pen. And then you kind of, I would say no experience was before beginner. Beginner is like you do it, but then maybe you have like some technical issues, or like you do it at first, but there's no technical basis for drawing. And no experience just means you never picked up a pen for the purpose of drawing. It could be a video. I might make it into a video. This is more of a brainstorming session. And if you guys have any questions, or if like I miss anything, just let me know and I can add that. So once I get a complete thought, then I could maybe make it into a video, and hopefully that's helpful. Cope with being a beginner because nothing I draw I like. I would say find simpler things to draw. And I like doing that before when I was first starting, like just picking something simple, or I guess depends on your level of patience. Okay, so no experience. And then you draw a little bit, right? Maybe like I don't want to put like a time on it because everybody progresses at different rates. But how would you describe a beginner in art? So I think everybody has ideas of what looks good, hopefully, like even before you start drawing. And so you see something you like, but you're not able to draw it. So maybe low dexterity, right? Idea, can't execute. I guess the level of execution. To pinpoint. Is off. And then usually drawing is almost kind of like a prerequisite to painting. I don't know. That's what I'm here to answer the question, or try to figure out the question. I don't think it is a prerequisite to drawing 100%, but I think if you cannot draw at all, then you'll find a tough time painting until you practice to the point where you can paint and draw. So it's unlikely to be able to learn one but not be able to do the other completely. It's kind of like a complementary skill. Afraid of reference, yes. Afraid of reference. Is that really a quality of a beginner? I think afraid of reference might not be a quality of a beginner. It might just be a quality of artists that have a skewed view of what creativity is. I mean, it could be, but I don't think it defines a beginner, so I'll erase this. So you can have beginners who are not afraid of reference. So, um, let's say uh, low observational skills. Okay. I almost want to say like lack of confidence in lines, but that's more of a symptom than a quality of beginners. Like you lack confidence in your lines because you don't know what you're doing. So I know I'm pretty sure there's like a list somewhere out there. I'm 100% sure, but I want to reinvent the wheel. So like my view is not skewed by what's out there already. Can't turn image into lines and head. So you can't contour. That's part of observational skills. This breaks down to a lot. Like uh it could be absolute or simplification. Oh my god, I cannot write. And that breaks down to simplification of value grouping. And shape. Let's be more descriptive. Cutting shapes. And then let's see. I think value grouping also branches off to like color grouping, but we'll just call it value because the only thing I care about right here is uh like contrast variations. Speed process. I don't think speed is really a issue for beginner, intermediate, or advanced artists. It's like you can't have a speed issue even if you're like very experienced. And how fast you need something done depends on like industry standard, or if you're just playing for fun, then it's like how fast do you think you should work? Scratchy lines. So low confidence is a symptom of the characteristics of a beginner instead of a characteristic in itself. It's like you don't know what you're drawing, so you have low confident lines. If you know exactly what you're drawing, you would not have low confident lines. So it's not like, people, a lot of YouTube videos I see, or a lot of whatever tutorials, like, yeah, do confident lines, do confident lines. But that's not very helpful. You will do confident lines if you know what you're drawing. If you know exactly what you're putting down and you've had the experience, like I make a line and I want it 45 degrees and I can hit it every time, um, then your lines would be confident. There's It's not an issue. What would I do every time I study art? That's in body feel like I'm taking nothing. Sometimes it takes a long time before you internalize what you learn. So you could do like heads like you draw a circle and you do like a chin, right? And then you do the lines for the eyes, and then whatever you can do like the Loomis method, where you cut off like side of the head and then do like cross contours, and that's a lot of information. And I'm adding in like these tiny information where you know I know how to slant these, or like how to angle this so that it sits correctly on the face. But for if you're just learning, you kind of have to learn it one at a time. Like how do I lay the eyes? Like, yeah, you have to do this, right? And center line, and do all that crazy stuff. It's gonna look stiff, and then the next time you draw, you probably forgot half the stuff, and you have to start over again. But yeah, after a while, you can skip a lot of the I don't want to say guidelines, but like the prep steps to get things into the right place. But sometimes, yeah, you can memorize everything, but if you don't internalize like the information, you can't really use it very well. Like, you need to know where to use each piece of information. Construct it in simple shapes. Yeah, yeah, I mean, you can. Simple forms. I don't really like construction only in shapes, because then you're kind of dealing with only two-dimensional. So I guess beginners at two-dimensional can only do flat drawings. Wonky perspectives. Hmm. Obvious lighting. Whoops. And lighting inconsistencies. Okay. Oh, hi. Same face syndrome is that's not a fundamental issue. It's just like you refuse to draw anything from like strict from reference. So I think that's an observational issue instead of, or maybe they just like drawing the face like that, but it's more of a different type of issue. Like, same face syndrome itself is not really a characteristic of beginner artists. But beginner artists might fall into that because they once they learn how to draw something, it's just like, ah, I can draw a face. I don't need to study too much more. But there's so many different types of faces if that's what you want to do. I don't think same face syndrome is really a huge problem. And honestly, most artists gonna default to a certain pattern eventually. What do I mean by observational skill? Let's say I draw, like a random bunch of lines. Like, can you draw these lines? Like, I just did it randomly. Can I draw these lines? Like, it's actually pretty hard. Like, how accurate can I get it to? Can I replicate a certain shape or certain type of shapes? And once I replicate it, how well can I tell the problems? Like there's like motor function issues. Like my motor function is not perfect, but I can tell like this angle is wrong. This curves down a bit more, so this goes down, and then this is longer. This is longer, so this whole part is longer. This needs to be moved that way, and then it's thinner here. That's not care about line weight, but this curve is more like this, and then this is shorter or more narrow. So stuff like that. Because they're following the same. Once after a while, even if you don't follow the same template, you tend to fall into that proportion that you like. Is not a bad thing, but if you want to change it, you should be able to change it if you want to. You keep in mind attempting to draw accurate. What are you keeping in mind? So there's this artist called Barg. His name's Barg. So he goes over some observational skills. Oh no, I drew on the same. Okay. So anyway, like if you try to draw a bunch of random lines and you try to copy it, even if you drew the random lines, it's actually somewhat hard to copy. So say obvious inconsistencies. Let's go to intermediate. What's an intermediate artist? Or actually, let's break it down to good and bad. So like, what can an intermediate, or can and cannot? So what can an intermediate artist do? Draw forms, decent form, basic observations. So this is relative value, accuracy, and then let's just list them like this. Let's not even number them. Let's say value and color accuracy, because like even if you don't draw with color, you can still tell if someone's an intermediate artist. Good shape, accuracy. Let's do cannot. Form. Ooh, what is something that an intermediate artist cannot do? Major changes to form. Major. Oh my god. Sometimes I hate writing on the tablet. To form without reference. Struggling to find a style that's unique to them. I don't think that's an intermediate problem. I think struggling to find a style that's unique to them is an advanced artist problem. At least like early advanced. Oh hi. Yeah, learn multiple references. I feel like that's right. Okay, better controls. Yeah. Can draw accurate-ish to intention. So let's say I draw an isosceles triangle as an intermediate artist, I would, I could measure some things and then I'll be able to make sure that it's actually an isosceles triangle. Whereas a beginner might not know how to measure very well. So if you tell them to draw an isosceles triangle that's upright, they might do something like this and call it an isosceles triangle, but it's not. So that's what I mean by intent. So I think an intermediate artist should be able to do this with like pretty easy. Like that's one of the basics uh, to kind of get here. So if you identify an isosceles triangle in a drawing, like a shape or something, let me pull up a reference. It'll be easier with a reference. It's just a triangle with two equal sides. Okay, let me find a. Let me find a reference I like. I don't want to. Okay, this one I do like. Okay, so here's a. Where's the reference? Okay, here's a reference, and oops, let's not do that. You know, beginner artists would, if you tell them to try to draw this first, they would freak out, and then they would try to like take the most obvious parts and then like try to outline it, right? Like do something like this, or they would go, oh, there's an eye, right? I know how to draw an eye, so let's draw an eye, and then eyebrows, and then nose, and then the face. Maybe they don't really know how to draw a face from this profile, so something like they might make this kind of mistake, and then ears you can't really see, so let's ignore that, and then this eye is tend to be kind of hard because perspective issues, and then don't really know how to put this. So and you get like weird lines, like line angles based on observation. But an intermediate artist might say, if they wanted to study this, they might think, oh, let's do forms, like let's do Loomis head or something, like just do the cross, do the neck as a cylinder. You kind of fill the rest. The rest is easier to fill. So I think this is I would consider this like pretty standard intermediate approach. And then you might start doing structures for like perspective for the chest, the box, and then stuff like that. That's a pretty good way to start. And some people might start with like light and shadow, so like the shape here. So if you're painting especially, you might do something like this, right? And you get the image much faster, and it looks pretty good from the get-go if you can do shapes very accurately. So I don't know if there's any more qualities. I'm sure there are more qualities I can list, but I have to think through it. So can let me put that in. Let me put the answer in. Combine multiple ref relative ease, because it is pretty difficult to do. So I think an intermediate artist would still have problem with this depending on what they're trying to combine. So let's say you're at this step and you don't really know what to do, but you want to add something that doesn't exist in this image. So let's say a helmet. And you know what a helmet looks like. You see a helmet like from the front view, and maybe something like this. Yeah, well, whatever. But you can take that and you should be able to convert the forms like in the perspective you need it to be. I know this curves this way because of the head tilt, and you can probably see the bottom of the other side. And now we can erase the inside structure. So you should be able to pull references from different angles and then just put it in just based on the form, like rotating objects or rotating the light. This would be I wouldn't say intermediate artists would be very comfortable doing this, but they can do it if they really try really hard. So now you can add like designs to it if you wanted to, but like I don't know, what does the back of a helmet look like? Like it probably like a flare so the hair can go out, right? And you can start designing things, right? But this is kind of hard for, I think, even most, I don't know most, but even for some intermediate artists. And I want to define what intermediate artist is like, or describe them, so that I can build a skill tree later. So yeah, it's like how clearly can you imagine things? So can do imagination to form. Accurate. Uh, hmm. Uh, okay, so I erased the nose accidentally. Let me just put that back in. It bothers me. I accidentally wrote this on the same layer, so it's over. Let me. There you go. Can I don't know what merge selected layer is in this in CSP actually. Now Control E just merge down, and Control Shift E just merges all. Thinking imagination, directly sketch it before forgetting it. Yeah, some people do that. I do that sometimes. Okay, what? Let's do a little bit of advanced artist. I would say I'm like early, really early advanced artist, maybe even super late intermediate artist. So I don't think my judgment of what an advanced artist is going to be fair or super accurate. And lighting. We're talking like more traditional fundamentals, like a artist that's, I guess, similar to me, where it's like more interested in impressionism or realism or whatever they call Renaissance stuff. But you know, it's a little bit different if you're into like abstracts and stuff. So I can only speak to like a very small subset of illustration artists, and only a very small type. So let's see. Can dissect. Actually, and let's do orchestrate compositions. To accent a point. I think that's a pretty accurate way to put it. And then cannot. What can an artist not do? That's a hard one, because I don't know what I cannot do. Or I don't know what I don't know, so. Can. This one's kind of a vague one. Study. Effectively. So they know everything an intermediate artist might know, but with that knowledge, they can extend it to learn other things. So if I'm really good at drawing cylinders, right, like an intermediate artist would not have any problem to draw something like this accurately and be able to tell like the difference, the details, like something like this, right? And I can make like a few, not assumptions, calls to characteristics. So for example, something like this, let's do some explanation to it. Whoops, don't do that. Oh no. Okay, so let's look at the cylinder. So yeah, and let's call out some stuff. With this cylinder, like as an intermediate artist draws it, they can tell you a few things about the cylinder. Like the cylinder, you're looking down on the top of the cylinder. So this is the top face. I can see the top face. That means if the cylinder was here, that means the eye level is probably around here. Right? It's eye. It's an eye. Trust me. So that's why we can see a lot of, or we can see some of the top, but this curve also tells me, like this curve also tells me that we see more of this top face than the bottom face. So if the bottom face was exposed, So this is B. Let's do lowercase b, and then this is A, so I would see more of B than A. And I know this. I know if I drawn it in because of how this curve, like this curve, is like more steep than this curve. So this is more shallow. This is more steep, and I have that information. So, with an advanced artist, they can take this, like they're confident that they can dissect things really clearly. So if I wanted to study this picture, for example, I wanted to study the roundness of the face, I can judge based on, you know, this shadow, or like the light to shadow transition. I can tell how sharp that is, and I can draw it in accurately. Now I know, like, what's the depth of this, just based on the shadow, what's the depth of the nose and how round the cheek is at that point. And I can connect it with other knowledge, like what does the structure look like for the skull? Like skull from the front, right? So something like that. It's not accurate, but it's whatever. This cheek is really sharp, and it's this transition right here, and I can use that to build my knowledge a bit more. An intermediate artist might not see this stuff. Like if you have some experience, but like you're studying things at face value, then you might not see these kind of things as easily. So you can't connect, you know, this knowledge with the anatomical knowledge and then the lighting information to say, I'm going to keep that in mind the next time I draw a face. I would put sharp edges around the cheek, and then based on, you know, what I want the face to look like, I would vary the sharpness, or maybe like lower this a little bit to make the face structure a little different. But I think an advanced artist would have no problem doing that. This stream is not sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Unfortunately, I'm not getting paid. Would advanced artists be able to draw anything they want? Yes, they should be able to draw anything they want realistically, but an advanced artist might have issues with, I would say cannot, but I think is it okay. So they might have problems. Say hard is points. It's a word for it. Isolate, yes. Isolate. Heuristics. Oh my god. Of as style. So I think this is where style comes in. It's pretty hard to do because there's so many moving, like what is a style? And there's a lot of moving parts. And if you can't isolate characteristics of a style, you can't really fine tune it. So let's say you draw with a style, but you don't really know why you draw with a style. Maybe you just, you know, you just hate drawing eyes because they're a certain way or from a certain angle. So you always, like, instead of drawing eyes like accurately, right? Like you hit this angle, and instead of doing this, because maybe this line is actually pretty hard to do accurately because it kind of overlaps with the iris a lot of times and people just don't see it. But let's say you have a hard time drawing this, and maybe you've drawn 100 references, and you're at this point you're like an advanced artist, or like a very late intermediate artist. You might still have trouble drawing eyes like this, but you've drawn Like when you see this, you default to something like this, which is perfectly fine, but it's a style. But you don't know why you do it, then that means you have problem isolating the characteristics of a style. You don't know if it's like because you don't know how to draw it or because you choose to draw it like this. And I think that's one of the problems that happens even at the highest level. Or higher level, I don't know what the highest level looks like. I think it's hard to hard in rendering to see how to go on. I don't know what go on better set. Okay, yeah. I, maybe that's an advanced issue. I'm not sure. Actually, I think that's more of an intermediate issue that is also in advanced. So cannot know when to start or when to stop or keep working the arts. So like you keep working on it, but then sometimes, you know, like the graph kind of it could look something like this, like good. This is plus. It's 100. That's 0, and then time spent is like 0. Let's say hours, and then 500 hours. That's something more reasonable. 300 hours. So it looks something like this, like maybe 25. It goes up like it tapers off. So it could do weird things in the beginning. So if we zoom in, it probably looks something like, oh my god. Okay. So you sketch. And then maybe 2 hours in, it looks like complete shit because you've covered over the sketch. Like the sketch looks really well. And then maybe 50 hours, the graph not to scale, but 50 hours, you kind of almost peak out. You can still keep rendering and it'll look better if you print it out really big, but then after a while, it gets worse and worse. This is more realistic, like maybe 30, 60, and 100 hours. I know it's not even, but so maybe after 25 hours, you kind of peak out and then you just it's not as good as you want it to be, but you can't really improve it. So you either you keep trying and it looks worse and worse, or it doesn't do anything. Right? I think knowing how this curve works is a problem for intermediate. And for beginner, they kind of get stuck, like they get stuck in that first section, and they're afraid to even go here. Like, they don't want to try to color it or whatever. Or maybe they get here and then they get stuck and then they get back up here and then it's like, why do I waste the time if I start off my sketch really well and then I spend like 5 hours on the drawing and it ends up to be worse than my sketch. Yeah, skill cap. Well, it's not really skill cap. It's like, do you know how to keep working on a piece? And do you know how much you should work on a piece? Um, how I block, right? It's I can, let's say a reference, and I have this line right here. I have this line right here, right? And I can fine tune that line a little bit, and that's the light part. I am just looking on the reference to see what that shape looks like. And then if I have that shape, then I can kind of guess like, oh, the nose bridge has a certain curvature, so I know it's gonna go down this way, right? I'm not looking at the reference, and yeah, it does. But um, this I don't know what's happening. Oh, it's the shadow from this particular flower. I think that that petal. I think it's this way. And if we have these kind of guesses, then we don't really need structure. So I can say the light's coming this way, and I can make other guesses. Like if I trace that same um, pattern, I can guess what other shadows can fall, and where they can fall. So this light is probably the gap here. Pretty sure that. And then let's see what else. What else can we see? So this light here is probably the gap between these two flowers. Because it's more, or it might be vice versa, but I think it's this way. Because this flower is more to the, like more into the picture. This flower is more out. So I think this flower is casting the shadow. Could be wrong, but if the guess is good enough and I don't have a way to disprove it and I draw it like that, then it would look very believable. So that's kind of how you do like lighting. I don't really know if it's like a right left brain kind of thing, but yeah, based on that, based on these lighting information, I could add like the helmet, right? Like I can add uh the helmet thing, and I can guess that there's gonna be light here, and then I can guess how much of the cast shadow from the helmet is gonna hit, and then there's going to be light here. So if we didn't have the flower, so that would be like a pretty late intermediate thing, I think, to be able to add things from different references based on design and then add it in to where it looks realistic based on lighting. So I would say this kind of skill is false somewhere. Let's say this is like a spectrum of how advanced skill wise. I would say it's like right here, maybe. Like a very arbitrary point, but let's say like you're gotta be at least here. Or rather, if you can do that, you're probably around here. Because you can draw a lot of other things with the ability. Did you want to review free drawing apps named I don't know how to pronounce that app. It's like IBS, but I've always called it IBS. I don't know if I want to review that because it's gonna be okay anyway. Like there are no drawing apps that are super terrible if it's a well-known name. Decent brush economy. So decent brush economy falls somewhere here. I would say if you know how to fix the like overbrushing issue, that's more of a confidence issue, and that falls right here. So this cutting shapes and value grouping. So the simplification is really what builds the brush economy. or what builds good brush economy habits. Lethargic. If you're a beginner, what are things you should focus on? Yeah, that's what we're here to find out. I'm trying to build the skill tree. Um, did I miss any questions? Not knowing how to use what software you're using can affect quality. I don't think that's the case, to be honest. As far as painting and drawing goes, the software does not matter that much. How do you know? Okay, I missed a bunch of questions. Okay, what good tip in trying to understand the art you're studying? Like if you're studying how to draw the body, how would you get that information to seep into my brain? So personally, I think you should not study anatomy until you can get to here. Because this is what you need to study anatomy. If you don't have that, you can't study anatomy. Because you don't even know what you're looking at. So what's a good tip in trying to remember what are you like? Wait, hold on. What glass crystal structures and complex interior infractions? So interior infractions and refractions, not infractions, refractions and reflections. That's I don't want to say useless, but it's not 100% useful. It's not very useful to get it 100% right, unless you're doing it for academic reasons. It's fine if it's off as long as it looks right. There are very little instances where you need to get the refractions and like curvatures correct. As nobody would know as long as it's good enough. Do you have a favorite color palette? I don't know. I don't think so. What I like besides color palettes and values, like the relative color palettes and values, like how the contrasts work. So it could be any color, really. So how do I know if I've been promoted or demoted from one tier to another? You can't really be demoted. Once you learn any of these, you don't forget. You don't accidentally, like, that does not actually accidentally happen. If you can draw decent form, it means you cannot screw that up. Like if you tell me to draw a okay, a square that turns into a cylinder. Okay, that's very random and some people would have an issue with this. So a square turns into a cylinder that actually enlarges a little bit. And if I wanted to shade this, why is this so kind of whack? Oh, it's the wrong one. The length I go to prove a point. The the line itself is pointless at this point. So I can keep refining this, but the point is I can keep refining this, and this reference file doesn't exist anywhere. Maybe it does, but if I can draw this, then I can draw this every time. It's not like I can accidentally get demoted and suddenly I forget how to draw this. So you can't really get demoted. Whether how you get promoted, that's what the skill tree is for. Like if you know how to do something, then you can probably check it off. If you're not sure if you know how to do something, you probably don't really know how to do it. Color subsurface scattering would it be? That depends on the base color. Like if it's skin, then and the light scatters through skin, it's orange. But if it's like through grass or something, it might be yellowish or green. And you can say things like purple has a higher frequency, so it passes through substrates easier. So if it's green or yellow, then you would choose green because it's a stronger photon. Might be, you can use different logic for it. It's hard to, okay. If it's something I see something, I see something missing, but I don't see what it is. I don't. Oh, okay, the curve, yeah. Can you explain more how to approach plot? Okay, so I went over that. Not knowing how to use, okay, went over that. Do you usually go for the general head shape before you go for the hollowing out of the eyes? No, I go for the general light shape. I don't care what the head shape is. Exactly. I care like which side the light's coming from, but I don't even care how like what the proportions are. Where does mastery of, yeah, I answered that one. For beginner, do you think mangaka is one of the best artists out there? Uh, I don't think the pressure to keep pushing uh like output makes them better or worse artists. If anything, it's bad for them, not good, to be honest, because then you don't really push the completion. You have to turn shit in, but you don't really spend time honing that final part, like of the finished product, which I'm guilty of as well. Just because like we all want to finish stuff, right? But sometimes it's okay to spend more time to work on the hard part. So anatomy has shapes and proportion as prerequisite. It also has observation as prerequisite. If you don't know what you're looking at, then you can't study it. You don't if you don't know exactly what you're looking at, then you can't study it. Don't forget, but I think it's possible to fall into the beginner habits. But if you actually try to put the time in, you still know how to draw. I don't know if that's true. You can have a bad drawing. Let's say I limit myself with really stupid limits. Like, I'm gonna finish this drawing in 35 minutes. I'm gonna just not care, not look up references. If I don't know how to draw something, I'll just guess. Yeah, I can bring bad habits into my drawing, but the fact is that I don't have to do that. Like if I tried, I can still be an intermediate or advanced artist. You don't, like, let's say there's a really good musician, he can play all the songs, no problem. But you judge his skill level based on how he plays while he's drunk. No, that's not fair. Are your brushes available to download? I have them on Patreon, but they're really, really simple brushes. You can literally get anything else and it'll be fine. As a beginner, I should stick with simple brushes like hard or oval brush with no textures, or should I practice with? It's not so much practice with brushes. You can pick up a fancy brush. It doesn't really matter. It's not like if you use a round brush, you'll improve significantly faster or faster at all. If you pick up a really fancy brush, just stick with that brush. The problem with brushes is people focus too much on getting the right brush and they go brush hunting, testing brushes, and then they draw it once or twice with that brush and they don't like it, so they try to look for new ones. Not only do you get less practice because it takes time to learn how to use a brush, and if you just give up on it after a couple weeks or a couple days because it doesn't feel right, then move on to the next one. You never get through that first section of learning. So you might as well just pick an easy brush and just learn with that because they're easy to control. Brushes is definitely useful. Like there are certain brushes that I would rather have than not, but I can do without it, and I also know exactly what it does. How to get rid of muddy colors? It's not always a value problem. Sometimes it's because you jacked up the saturation too much. So know where to use the saturation and where to use more desaturated colors, and that gets rid of the muddy colors. Just basically, I basically just say color correctly, right? But correctly means like, um, if let's say you're starting with a reference, for example, let's look at references because it's easier to demonstrate the issue. So let's look at this reference. You might think, oh, this is yellow, right? And please don't color pick. It's not. It's very bad habits. But let's say you're drawing this and you're drawing it and you're like, oh, this is yellow, that's yellow. So you just do yellow and you think it's really saturated. So you just do like, oh, pretty saturated yellow and color this whole thing. But really, if you really look at it, that's white. That's not yellow. I'm putting yellow next to it, but that's white. And that's not yellow, that's orange. And it's pretty dark. So where the yellow, like where are the yellow? And it's not that yellow, it's here. It's like that. Maybe a little bit more saturated. Sometimes it's, yeah, like this is so close that it's blending in. Sometimes it's just parts that are saturated. And it's muddy because you just try to dump yellow into this whole thing because it looks yellow, but really this is very desaturated. This right here, it's probably like that. Yeah, got pretty accurate. So that it's very desaturated, like not even halfway. But if you zoom down and look at it, you'd be like, oh, that's super orange. That's really orange, and I want it to be colorful, so let's drop some orange in here, right? And you would be super off, and then everything will just look neon color. And if you do this, and then you do, yeah, this is yellow now, and you try to blend it, try to blend this. Let's try to blend it. And you're like, yeah, it's gonna look muddy because you have no contrast. Tips for drawing ice. Uh, Learn how to do shapes and then place the shape on a three-dimensional object and rotate that three-dimensional object. If you can do that, you can draw ice. Yes, you hear a cat. It's my cat. Okay, so where are the questions at? Let me see. As we should stick. Okay, answer that one. The ability to deconstruct something to efficient stroke an advanced skill. I would say it's an intermediate skill. I would say it's an intermediate skill because it's something that I've labeled as something that a beginner cannot do. So, and I only put it here because I think an intermediate artist should be able to do it. You can't just try to pixel crunch your way through a painting. It would be it wouldn't be a painting, it would be printing, and it wouldn't be fun. I mean, how accurate can you deconstruct something, right? Like, um, and you can get so accurate that I guess it puts you into advanced. Like, I think an advanced artist would have an easier time deconstructing very complicated stuff very accurately versus an intermediate or beginner artist. Um, a good question is if you do a master study, how are you doing it? Depends on what you're studying. So a master study, when I study style, then I study the style. If I'm studying like how they use certain things like contrast, then I study that. At least isolate it for a while. Um, so yeah, you have to know what you're studying. Maybe you're studying form. In that case, you should just study photos. If you're studying form from an artist, usually you study the artist because of how they dissect form and style, not the form itself. So let's say I can draw form perfectly. I can draw photorealism if I tried. And I'm studying artists. I'm studying how they interpret realistic lighting and how they simplify it, how they exaggerate it, why they exaggerate certain things, and why that makes it look good. Like why do I like that artist and how they see things. So you're kind of studying their taste mostly. Not the skill is the skill is here. That's the technical skill. This is more interpretation. So if you can interpret stuff, then you're kind of more advanced. But if you can interpret but you don't have the skill to carry it out, then you're intermediate and you just, let's say you have lofty goals. Like if you're an intermediate and beginner artist, you're thinking about like, oh, I want to draw like this manga artist or I want to draw like this painter, and you're like you're barely here or maybe you're beginner and you just want to learn this style, you can't do it. You can't do it. You can try really hard and you can copy some of the characteristics, but it's unlikely that you'll ever draw like them without learning the basic skills. It's like if someone spoke French, like wrote a really beautiful French poem, and you heard the French poem, you have no idea how to speak French, and you Googled like what the translation is, and you want to be a French poet, so you start copying how they say how they read the poem. You'll most likely never be a good as good of a French poet as the guy who wrote it because there's some underlying skills that you would never be able to learn if all you see is the poem, the final product. So that's the style issue. I received the advice of painting more traditionally because the mixing of paints will teach me the correct values and color relationship. It's not the mixing of paint. The mixing of paint is a medium problem. So how you mix paint, let's say oil paint or acrylic, whatever, you learn to mix things accurately by gauging like how much red do you need, how much green do you need. You don't have that problem in digital. So painting more traditionally in the sense of like don't use too many layers is good because it helps you uh, do contrast and edges and I guess some color like value relationships, but really it forces you to break things into pieces, into shapes, without the layer crutch because you can. It's easier to fix with the layers, technically. Might take you longer, but it's easier to separate. How do I blend colors? Pick the color that's the medium. Like pick the color that's in between. I just pick it like manually. Uh, can you explain? Oh, wait. Okay. Is there any good guides to follow if you're a beginner? There's plenty of good guides out there. I haven't reviewed them, but I know there are good materials out there. The problem is, are they good ones? It's that there's a bunch of bad ones. That's the bigger issue. I've been really trying to learn. There's so many guides. Yeah, it's the bad ones that's the problem. So and bad ones is from people who haven't, like, maybe, like a lot of YouTubers, they start drawing and then they learn a bunch of things. I'm sure in their own rights they can create art that they like, but because the opinion is so narrow, so they might be somewhere here and then they start teaching people who are here and they haven't seen the whole picture yet. So what worked for them in their style, uh it's not applicable to how other people want to approach it. And then you get these really localized advice that uh, would help you if you want to get to that exact style. Like if you want to draw exactly like this, let's say someone who has a cartoony style, he's teaching the fundamentals of art. They might say the right things, like you should focus on your line quality. You should focus on line consistency or confidence. So if you tell like a beginner, like, how do you get better at drawing? This is a huge one. Just do line confidence. Just have more confidence in your line. I think that's terrible advice. It's terrible advice because that comes as a symptom. Not, it doesn't fix the problem. I haven't really spent too much time watching tutorials. I've heard a bunch of good things about Proco, but I haven't really looked at it. I've looked at a few podcasts that he was on, or maybe like talks, I guess podcasts, and I think the artist that he has on his team is really good. Especially there's this old guy with a beard, like a old skinny-ish guy with white beard and white hair. I Some of the things he says is really good. Probably all the things he says is really good. Oh, thanks. I mean, there's plenty of artists that is very proficient in the current market. And a lot of them are unknown because they work in an industry. They don't care. They don't post on social media because they don't have to. If you haven't improved much in 8 years, that means either you're not putting in enough time or you're not internalizing the information. You can say all the right things. You can say, I'm going to do this and that, and it will sound right. It's like if you go to an art teacher and ask them, it's like, this is what I want to do. This is my plan to study. Is it a good idea? They will tell you, it's like, yeah, it's great. You'll be a great artist. But if you don't internalize it and you don't approach the problem correctly at the right time, then you won't improve much. It'll be very slow. Is undo or erasing bad for practicing lines? Well, you get less feedback. If you draw a line and it's bad and you just erase it, then you're kind of lightening the consequence. So you don't. It's almost like you will learn through punishment, but uh, without sticking to the punishment, you how do I put this? You're more likely to make the same mistake again because it doesn't feel bad. So like I can just undo, right? Okay, I'll close the stream soon. I'll do another stream like this tomorrow probably because I want to, maybe, I don't know, but I want to do more brainstorming. You guys are giving me a lot of questions that I can think through. Marco Marco Bucci. Yeah, seen some of his stuff too. Not too many. Would drawing one illustration a week help? Yeah, it will help you improve. Should I do one illustration a day? What's your appetite for burnouts? What's your appetite for doing drawings and being frustrated? Some people can do 10 drawings a day, some people can do 10 drawings in a year and reach the same burnout. So depends on the mindset. If you do a master study, how do you do it? So I said this before, isolate what you want to learn from it, and also think about if master study is the thing that you really need. So if you're doing master study and you're working on form, then you should not be doing the master study. If you're studying how to draw form and lighting, you should not be doing master studies. Yeah, if someone tells you like, oh yeah, if you want to draw form and lighting, you want to study lighting, don't study photos, just study Leyendecker because he's a great artist. Terrible, terrible advice. It's a waste of time. You can't just power through it advanced by copying. Depends what you mean by copying. You can copy with structure, and that would get you there. If you're copying based on like, I want to get the pixel, I want to get pixel perfect, you'll never get there. You never get to like advanced, because advanced is not about accuracy. Like here, when you're here, you're trying to make good art. You're not trying to make accurate art. You're not trying to copy a photo exactly or an art exactly, because if you copy another piece of art, you can only be as good as that piece of art. Actually, you wouldn't be, because you didn't create it. You didn't compose it. So you're missing a lot of the skills. Video message. Okay, so it's like having lines there instead of undoing. Practice for visual reminder not to do that. I mean, kind of. That's my thought on it. But let's say you what's the difference between not undoing and undoing? So let's say I make a line, right? And let's say I try to draw the hair, right? A lot of people undo on hair, so I want to hit this shape, and then right, and then I go on to try to hit that shape. Oh, that was actually pretty good. That's pretty good too. Shit. Okay. Okay, let's say I do this. I don't like it. I erase it. I like that too. Shit. Okay. I don't like this one. I don't like that one. So at some point, you start relying on luck. You're just like, oh, this one's wrong. That one's wrong. That one's wrong. That one's not that good. Oh, I like this one, so I'll stick with this one. You're RNGing. You're not really correcting anything you're doing, and these are very minor corrections. So let's say I do this, and the next time I try to do a line, right, like this, now I'm in the habit of being very careless. I mean, it's hard for me to be careless because I've been doing it for so long, but but if I were to learn how to do this, I would vary my speed. I'll try to do something like, oh, what if I go slow? It kind of works, but what if I go fast? Which section do I go fast? Maybe I go fast here, turn, go fast here, right? So something like that. And you start experimenting different things and building habits that would get you to a higher level of accuracy, just more dexterity. You do not learn this as fast or at all if you do undo spamming. So you do the line like 16 times and you get the best line out there. You get the best final line you get to. You're not varying anything. You're just leaving it up to chance, basically. So you learn less, if that makes sense. Forming style it's kind of a difficult topic as well. So ideally one day you take less attempt. Ideally one day you take one attempt and you know exactly what shape you're getting out of it. It might not be accurate, but you know you'll like it because of certain habits. Like you notice differences in how you move your hand and how you move the pen and what angles you like, and how do you slow down a brush stroke and how do you speed it up to create a certain effect. So you already know what's going to come out, and that's the same that's a similar reason to why I say stick with like round brush or some simple-ish brush for a long time, because you'll learn how that brush behaves, and instead of picking up a new brush every week, it takes months or maybe sometimes years to, like, I know if I use this brush I can create like a grass effect if I fan it, right? Or if I fan it enough, because of how it spreads. Like I can expect something like this to happen. I know how much it's gonna happen based on how fast I do it. And these textures are not accidents. Like like a brush stroke, I can generally expect things like this to happen, like that. And I can use those textures in each brush strokes I put, so it's faster. But if you keep undoing or you keep using different brushes, then it's unlikely that you'll be proficient with any brush. Okay, I'm gonna head out, but I'll stream again tomorrow, maybe earlier, I hope. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, try to tag me on the Discord, the invites in the link or the description. I used the previous drawing for the stream because I can't show what I haven't finished yet, right? So yeah, okay. See you guys next time. I'll do another Q&A stream and discussion stream tomorrow if you guys want to join. I'm probably around the same time, so slightly earlier.